Yeah, definitely. Okay. So my name is Frank Blazquez. I think a big part of my artistic narrative is I'm a transplant from Chicago. I moved to New Mexico in 2010. So I've been here almost a decade now. It was a big environmental change. So I'm coming from a place where there's a lot of stimulus everywhere. I mean, that everyone's walking around. There's just a lot more humans in Illinois than there is in New Mexico. So I mean, that's awesome that I was able to take a break from all of that and come to New Mexico. Um, I was 21, 22 when I moved here. Um, and I was getting into a whole lot of trouble out there. I was getting into legal trouble. I had a major problem with substance abuse and just doing dumb stuff that some dudes in their 20s just end up doing, and some people end up just latching onto it just a little bit more and not growing out of it. So that was me for that time period. So moving to New Mexico was also um, was also a method that we tried to do for me to get out of that place. I mean, I had people that I had to get away from just because I would have gone to jail for a lot longer than what I was going for. So it did help for a little bit. I ended up also meeting up kind of with the same kind of crowd out here in New Mexico in 2011. So that actually didn't help too much. So even moving, right, like I did 4 states over, you still end up meeting the same people, which goes to show you too. I mean, if you don't take care of the things that you're supposed to be taking care of, they're gonna follow you, or you're just gonna meet them again.
Right.
But some of the major things are, I got into a lot of substance abuse here, and just getting into the street culture here. I found it really fascinating at one point, and really interesting, just the people that were here and how they contrast to my friends and stuff that I was used to back home. So just to make a really long story short, I uh, I was like, you know what, how do I show this type of world to a broader audience, or how would I be able to archive this just for myself, just so I could start to scrapbook parts of my life and different relics and symbols from my past. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna buy a digital camera, and I'm gonna start figuring out a way out to mediate all of this stuff. And when I say this stuff, I mean all of the interesting strangers that I would meet out here, people that would tell me their stories. I didn't really think were from this world, just really crazy stuff. And I just figured out, you know what, let me document this stuff. It's really, really interesting. And I think by doing that with a single subject portraiture, that's a really easy way to receive that narrative. Still imagery. I like color photography a lot. I really like black and white, and I'm really inspired by it, and I really admire it a lot. It's just that I feel with my generation and who I am, that color really speaks to my story too. So that kind of explains my portraiture in a nutshell. I like to keep it really simple too. Some of my images are different, and they're not just like single human subject portraits, but I do like to try to keep that, because I really like to see the reactions of what people feel, how they react, how they receive one thing that's inside of the frame. And I really I like to evaluate people's reactions to it. Even if they hate it, that's really cool too. If they love it, that's awesome. If they're kind of indifferent about it, that's really cool. If they think it's weird, if they think it's strange, I find that really interesting. And yeah, so 2016, I started to go back to school at the University of New Mexico, and I liked studying documentary photography, mostly from the Great Depression years. So like I think that's like the FSA years. I also liked a lot of the muckraking photography. as well from the Great Depression era. And sometimes I would just stay in the library for hours and just stare at all the books that they had just for the Southwest, just for the Great Depression years in the Southwest. Because I know there's so much around the world. There's different countries. You got New York, like that was a big one too for those years, for the Harlem Renaissance. If you were to fast forward just a little bit too, up until like the 60s and like 70s. But yeah, that's the stuff that inspired me a lot. So that was definitely lingering around in my head in the craft process region of my mind. And also I just felt it was really logical to start shooting subjects that are just like in my neighborhood. You know, as a poor college student, it's like, hey, how can I start this project for on a really low budget rather than traveling to a different country or something. It's like, hey, you know what? This is the place where I lay my head to sleep each night. Let's definitely focus on where I live first. And then kind of to go back to what I said earlier too, I got away from the people that were kind of bringing me to the bad areas and were still stuck in like substance abuse. I still had their contact information, and I really wanted to get their portraits, because these are still like relics and like totems from this world that I just left. So some of the portraits are actually friends that I either used to use with or people that I've seen like in passing that I just thought had really interesting looks. I mean, you see guys with like prison face tattoos that are like all over their face. And what's very interesting is what those tattoos are. I like tattoo culture. My stuff is all done mostly like in shops, stuff that you get like from like professional artists. The photos or the portraits that I take, a lot of the tattoos that you'll see, those are made in prison, which are completely different types of tattoos. They're a little bit cooler. They have a lot of serious stories behind them. They're pieces of memorials of people that have died, gangs that they used to be a part of, that they consider their family. There are a lot of also signifiers too of geography and regional pride, state pride. I found that really, really interesting as well too. People have a lot of pride that have lived here, that are born and raised in New Mexico. What's really interesting too is some of the people that you would think might not be able to know their history. They actually have access to their family trees. Some of them even have like historic like land grants from like 300-400 years ago. I'm like, oh my God, how do you still have this stuff? That's awesome. So
yeah, I was wondering if that's kind of like the piece behind me. Is that kind of what you use for inspiration when you started doing, when you do some more of these mixed media pieces, or how did the mixed media come into that?
So the one that's behind you, that's definitely just stuff that is just in my brain at the moment, just like bleeding onto the piece. I had a time where I was going through the rehab process. There's this prescription substance called Suboxone that helps people get off of opiates. So while I was on that, I wanted to do something productive, whether it was writing or just getting something onto paper. I don't care what it was. The goal was just to get it on there without stopping. So I honestly just let my brain just go into like autopilot. I had all the markers that I need in front of me, pencils, markers. I had like tape. I have some stuff too that's like found type of items, carpet, like residential carpet that I started to mess around with. But yeah, definitely just getting objects and things in my direct vicinity and just trying to see how I could make that my own. So there wasn't really like a blueprint more than what I was seeing right there and then. I think the goal was just to make sure that I keep all of the stuff that I wanted to do within these 4 lines, right within the frame. So yeah, so to kind of to hit that question again, it's just stuff that just comes right out of my brain at the moment.
In the Guardian article, you reference the war zone quite a bit. Is a specific neighborhood? It sounded like in Albuquerque.
Yeah.
But and then you talked a little bit in your statement about, again, like these very specific places that you want to document. Can you tell us a little bit more about the war zone? And I think it sounded like that area, like they're trying to change it or something
Definitely.
as well.
It's called the International District. So that's what you'll find when you're Googling that area, or if you go onto like a city website. But I prefer to call it the war zone because the people that still live there, that's what they still call it. So I like to call it what the people that live there call it. So, and I actually kind of live somewhat close to that area. I'm only like a few blocks from there, and there's gunshots every single night almost. So it's pretty bad. I'm from Chicago, so it's not as it's not the same type of violence as you would see out in Chicago, where there's like stratified areas and it's confined to like only like 1 or 2 blocks. And then you got like the north side and like the lakefront, just like 2 miles away. It's different. But out here, and what I kind of brushed on in the Guardian piece is there's really easy access to guns. You just have to be the right age, have a valid ID, and they literally let anyone walk into a gun store, and you can actually walk out with the gun within like a few minutes if you wanted to. They do the background checks, but that's actually expedited and it's done really, really quickly. So that's something that I saw that was really different when I used to live in Illinois. And just back then, the gun laws were even strict back then. You have to have some sort of permit, it seems, to even like look at a gun, right? Or to even have one. So, but yeah, there's really easy access to guns out here. And I think that really, really shows in the youth culture out here for some kids that have to keep them to survive. I do have, I think the first photo that I had there was this one couple, and there's this young man that was holding his gun. He was holding an assault rifle, and they said that they have it for protection, because that week actually there was a few youth that actually died. So, if they feel more comfortable having that gun rather than not having it, I'm not gonna make a judgment on how they should protect themselves or how they should feel safe. But I would like to make the connection how, I still feel like it's like this neo wild west where access to that kind of stuff is really easy. There's a lot of stuff like that going on here. So we have our own unique way of violence out here, and it's it's kind of sad when you see it start to hit the youth groups, right? The like 13 to like 18-year-olds that are getting locked up for that kind of stuff. So
I think you talk a little bit in your statement, like there are very specific people that you want to tell their stories.
Yeah, definitely. So as someone that identifies as Mexican, American, Chicano, that's myself, that's my family, I think I have the obligation to pay respects to that right away. And because there's still a major disparity out here between those two cultures as well, between the dominant culture and the people of color out here that are, there was actually just a story last week that came out in the Albuquerque Journal. There was a man that was actually murdered inside of his home by APD. They went inside of his home for a welfare check, and he had a shovel in his hand. He was this older man. He was visibly elderly, and he had like this rusty shovel in his hand, and he was almost like shaking it. He's a very weak old man, and he brought the shovel up, and they just shot him right there and then, and they murdered him. So that's when it kind of hit me again last week, is this You know, we also have our issues out here too with very intense force by the police officers out here that I feel is catalyzed by race sometimes. There was also a recent headline too, a couple months ago in Española, of a Mexican man that was driving. He was also a citizen too, but he was driving his car with the Mexican flag on his pickup truck, and a sheriff pulled him over and ripped off the flag and threw it on the ground and said, you know, you shouldn't be flying this flag. And then the sheriff drove off, and I think they actually just settled on that case this week. So actually that person got a payout on that, which they should. But yeah, so we, you know, you would think being New Mexico and something close to the border, and also having a very concentrated population of brown people here, that those issues don't happen, but they certainly hit this area out here too. But yes, definitely, because of who I am and my family, I definitely like to capture subjects that I think also reflect my culture as well.
I know you were recently part of the Southwest Contemporary New Mexico Artists to Watch. So obviously you are making your mark within that culture. I don't know if you want to comment a little bit on that.
No, yeah, like it's really nice seeing subject matter that I feel is usually suppressed and not seen a lot. It's nice to see it, definitely, in that kind of field, in the fine art world, you know, and mostly with portraiture. What you'll see, even in like the commercial world as well, you know, these beautiful people, right? These models, you know, beautiful bodies, beautiful faces, or what we would consider those tropes or those themes, right? So definitely trying to gather a counter narrative that I think speaks to people that I see every day, speaks to an environment that I wake up to every single day. I think that's part of what art is for someone, right? It's also explaining who they are as a person, whether it's involuntary or voluntarily doing your own autobiography, right? It's doing that with text, it's doing that with images, with pictures, with sculpture, with physical things. But yeah, definitely, I like to see that in the fine art world. I mean, it's also stuff that you have already seen before, right? It happens a lot in California. You'll see a lot of the Chicano artwork out there in California. There's a lot of stuff in New York, but for the spaces in between, I want to make sure that there's also a representation of people of color, of brown people out here in New Mexico that are different actually than people that are Mexican American in California, because that's the stuff that you see a lot, right? Like the stereotypes of like West Coast Mexican people, Chicano, Spanish, mixtures of that, and yeah, definitely we have our own signifiers and symbols and things that represent that. We have like shows like Breaking Bad, right? That try their best to kind of show what that kind of culture is like, or they attempt to. I don't think that's really accurate in terms of what the street culture is out here, but it goes to show you that people are starting to try to show that type of world. But yeah, to go back to the question before, seeing it in the fine art world, I think is really important, especially in like museums and galleries, that it's already tough to get into in the first place. I mean, I feel like my craft process is a lot of rejection too. Right? Every single day I'm, you know, as someone that's trying to make their mark as a new artist, as a young artist too, it's just this daily walk of rejection and just trying to stay afloat with that. But it's also very fun too, and challenging and very rewarding at the same time too.
Since the biennial does really refocus on contemporary art within the Mountain Plains region, and I was wondering if you might have a few comments on what it means to you specifically to be an artist working with a contemporary artist working within the Mountain Plains region.
Yeah, for me, right? For me, for my area, for New Mexico, the first thing that I think about is the Four Corners area, is like the northern Rio Grande. You got the Rockies is some of the major like these major gifts from God, right? That you'd like notice right away when you wake up. So that's what I think of right away as my immediate environment. Um, yeah, so once again, the Four Corners area, Arizona, Colorado, Utah, Texas are the main parts that are the main states that like landlock us. So, but they're also very important too, because I see a major cultural exchange between those states as well. So I feel that New Mexico is also like a microcosm to show like our, I mean, I hate to say this phrase or word, but like our melting pot, right? For lack of a better phrase. But also it's we have a lot to offer as well, of just New Mexican culture that I feel hasn't been seen a lot, because a lot of people that live here, sometimes they don't want to show that. It's really, really precious to them. They don't really want to let go of that, you know, and you can see that when you come out here. It's still a desert. It's still a very remote place in 2020. There's a lot of places where you go and your cell phone still doesn't work. It's a place where, you know, it's one of those places where it feels like a natural like artist residency, just being there, just living here, right? So yeah, I love being here, and I feel that it definitely changed my life as an artist.
Awesome. Thank you. But I've just been asking all the artists, is there anything that you're doing kind of that is specific to this very, I think, peculiar time that we're in? I mean, we're all kind of experiencing this different, you know, new normal together.
Yeah, definitely. For some artists, it's like, welcome to our world, right? Where for some of us, we're already hermits to begin with, that are antisocial, that already don't like going out. So, you know, I was already doing that. I like just coming home and just coming to like my studio area and just getting straight to work and not seeing people for a few days. But knowing that everyone else is going through that, you know, there's like this feeling of communal sadness, that what you think's going on outside, like your safety net of knowing that it's a normal world out there while you're in here making art, that's not happening. You know, it's still sad to see. I still remember 3 or 4 weeks ago, that second week in March, where it was that one day CNN, all the news stations were playing, giving their rendition of like what's going on. And, you know, I'm like, oh my God, what's going to happen? You know, what's going to happen now is our whole world's going to change as we know it, right? Is it, or is it not? Is it going to stay the same? What's going to happen? But I mean, I think there's going to be some great art that comes out of it. I know that under this presidency that it's not really too favorable to the arts, for artists to get grants and things like that. Also for galleries and museums to also get their grants to help out artists. You know, it's hopefully that changes soon, or, you know, hopefully there's more opportunities for us, because it was already hard to be an artist before this. There was still like that rites of passage, right, of having to suffer as an artist, and having fun with that, right, knowing that, you know, you got to go through this stage if you want to get to a different level. But what's it going to be like now being an artist? You know, it's a thing that also creates a lot of anxiety, I think, with some of my friends in different states. So hopefully we can all come together and just you know, use our art to, whether it's us protesting, or if it's a way that we want to express something other than words or through voice, hopefully we can do that in a very dignified manner. So looking forward to see what kind of cool art comes out of this. So.